I wish I knew this when I was a project manager. I'm Doug Vincent, Chief Executive of Mastt, and I'm going to give you all the knowledge that I have about construction project management to make sure you don't go over budget and track your project costs like an absolute pro. Okay, we're going to cover 4 key areas so that you can save big on your project and track costs like a pro. We'll go through why it matters, just a quick recap. We're going to break down the budget. We need to get granular when we're tracking project costs. I'll introduce to you in section 3 a cost tracking system that just automates everything, and then we'll go through the automated reports and what I call the king chart before I offer up tons of free stuff. And later on in this video, I'll provide the free templates that you need to get started today and start saving time immediately. So why does project cost tracking matter? Without wanting to state the obvious, we don't want to go over budget. We also don't want to be delayed. We don't want to individually look like a goose if something goes wrong. And it's highly likely that at some stage during your project, you're going to need to prepare a report and you're going to need the costs tracked to prepare that report. So if you do this well, you're going to save money. You will avoid budget overruns. You're going to get your project finished on time as best as we can and avoid those delays. You look good. We want to make you look like that pro, get a new job, or just generally impress your peers, stakeholders, and colleagues. And if you're working as a consultant, or maybe you have internal stakeholders, these types of tips will help build trust and transparency so that you can kind of get that next project funded, or maybe even win that kind of next project as a project manager. So breaking down the budget, tracking project costs like a pro really does require us to get granular and phase out the budget across 4 key stages: planning, the design and procurement stage, the construction stage, and then you have a closeout stage. There's going to be money spent in all 4 of these stages. There may be 5, people have sometimes even got 6. Whatever your life cycle is, stage it out like this, and I recommend tracking costs in each stage associated with each stage. So that allows us to focus on the stage that we're in today, costs that we're tracking today, and then roll those lessons into the next stage, because it may very well be that some cost that's changing in design may impact the construction stage later on. Cool. It also makes sense, matches the natural life cycle. So a couple of things here that you'll be tracking. Won't go into too much detail. Why this works makes sense following the natural life cycle of a project, but it also allows us to identify those risks early before they escalate. We can identify construction stage risks in the design stage. We can identify design stage risks in the planning stage. And so this type of budgeting methodology and structure gives us that foresight to make better budgeting decisions, better allocation, and it also gives accountability for each stage. Last 2, improve cost control. This is going to make it super easy, and of course, accurate forecasting. So you can track real costs versus the budgeted costs in real time, and then carry forward what you know to the next project. All right, how to track costs like a pro. So the pros don't use spreadsheets, so you can ditch that crazy spreadsheet from your last project. There's heaps of great project cost tracking software out there that will fit your ideal use case, whether that's an IT project or a construction project. Mastt is great for construction, project management, capital project management. So I'd recommend getting a software that automates that work, because it will also power the reports and eliminate duplication of effort, double entry of data, that type of thing. So there's a bit of a guide here for the best project cost management software that I'll share down in the notes. You can kind of cruise through, and I'll put all the good ones in one spot for you. Now, the key consideration when we are doing project cost tracking is we have a fixed budget to report against. Are we over, are we under? And so we need to then track against that budget the commitments, the changes, the risks, the spending in real time, and then incorporate the latest knowledge that we have, our latest understanding and insights from the project to make an accurate judgment of our position. And we do that using a few key formulas. The first formula is our forecast at completion. Forecast at completion is your best estimate of what you think the project is going to cost at the end when it's all said and done. Some people call it estimate at completion, some people call it final forecast cost. Whichever it is, it's just the cost of the project when it's complete, the total cost. Forecast at completion is committed plus uncommitted costs. And if we bring that down to our second magic formula for variance, we want to know the budget minus what we think it's going to cost at completion gives us the variance. So if you have a $100,000 budget and a $120,000 forecast at completion, you are $20,000 over budget, and you can use that information to make decisions on how to course correct, get additional funding, or potentially, something else. So how do these key components, commitments, changes, risks, and spending affect the budget? Well, it kind of looks visually a bit like this. So you have your forecasts. Whoop. Oh no. Go down a bit. Under your budget, you have your risks, forecasts, which make up your uncommitted. And then under your committed, you have your signed contracts and changes against those contracts. And those give you your forecast final cost or your total cost of completion, whichever one it was. And then, of course, you make payments against the contract and the contract changes that you have approved. So all of that is cost tracking against the budget, and we need a system to do that. And what exactly are the costs within each of those elements? I might just focus on risks for the moment. The others are pretty self-explanatory, but to really track project costs like an absolute pro, you do need to have a proper action-based risk management system. So you don't want to just put a contingency 10, 20% on top of your budget. You really want to identify what are those unexpected risks, what are these things that might occur, and put a dollar against them. If you can identify all the known risks and even the unknown risks to the best of your ability, that will ensure a no surprises approach to your project, and it will mean that you have sufficient funds to slowly retire risks as the project goes on and ensure that you stay under that budget threshold. So, pro tip, list all the risks out in a risk register, and then you have your cost tracking system and your risk register system talking to each other really nicely. Now, I've just done a bit of a summary here for us on what are the 12 must-have metrics for project cost tracking. And I won't recap all of them, but generally they cover the budgeting, they cover the commitments to give us that final forecast cost at completion, and then of course the variance to the budget and paid to date. So just try to make sure that you are reporting on each of these 12 metrics with your project cost tracking. So you want to be tracking these. And if you do the methods that I described above, you'll have the data to do that. Now, let's see how all this actually goes and works together. So we'll jump into Mastt, where we have a automated, cost tracking ledger. So on the left-hand side, I have those budgets that match the stages: planning stage, design stage. I've got my construction and closeout budget as one, and then I have a fourth budget for contingency and risk. And within each of these stages, I'm tracking costs and I'm tracking commitments that I've made underneath that budget. I've got architect example here. And within each of those contracts or commitments, there's going to be line items for that individual vendor that I can track in granular detail using payments, making changes against those contracts. Under contingency, I've also forecasted out a few line items, and I've got a risk here. So all of these line items are rolling up really nicely underneath the budget to give us an accurate final forecast cost. So those 12 key metrics appear here. We have the budgeting, we have the original contract amounts, we have the changes or the variations to those contracts. Those together give us our current committed position. This is what we've signed, this is what we're up for. Of course, we have then all the risks, all of the uncommitted amounts, pending, etc. And if you combine your current commitments and your uncommitted amounts, that gives you your final forecast cost. And you can then report a variance against each budget to see if you are over or under budget per budget line. And then on the very far right, I've got a nice visualization here of the payment progress per budget. So that screen is a single automated system that you can use to track all your project costs in one automated platform. And it includes all of the reporting as well that we'll come back to in just a moment. So if we duck back to our education series, we'll get to the automated reporting and the chart, because there's really only one key chart that you need at minimum for, I'm going to go back over here, sorry about that. There's only really one key chart I think that you need that sums up the 12 metrics and more. And it's this budgeting chart that Mastt has created that includes all 12 metrics, and it just clearly shows all of them in one spot. It also communicates progress. You can see the risks in yellow, and you can see the issues with the budget just thanks to the obvious color coding and the drawing your attention to the right areas. So using charts and using visualizations helps us to communicate data in a much, much better way that proportionally gives off information in addition to the metrics that we're after. So this is automated in Mastt. This is the best way we feel to report on project cost tracking in a single, easy to use chart. And I wish that we had a system like this and a chart like this back when I was a project manager, because this would have just saved us a ton of time and perfectly communicated the budget tracking position in a single neat visualization. So how do we do all of the reporting? Well, if we head to the dashboard, drag this out of the way, head to the dashboard of Mastt. Cool. And I'm going to remove this. And you can see on this chart, I have got my budgeting chart, but maybe I just want to have a financial chart on its own and not with all of the information here for project status. So here's an example I prepared earlier. This would be, a 10 out of 10 top-notch project cost tracking report that would be well received by many of the construction clients and capital project owners out there. And if you want to, you can actually generate a really nice one-page PDF of this that you can share over email. And this is entirely automated. I've put this together in a way that I think makes sense, but maybe you might find a better way of customizing this on your own, and you can get all of these free templates online at mastt.com. So lastly, some free stuff. Hit the link down below to get a free cost tracker for the 12 metrics. We also have a ton of free templates available in our library, and those dashboards that I showed you are also available as great examples for you to use for inspiration in your own project cost tracking journey and reporting. If you thought this video was helpful, please hit like, please subscribe, and if you need any help with your project delivery or just capital projects or construction project management in general, please feel free to email me, doug.vincent@mastt.com, and I'll see you guys soon.